Good morning. Good morning to all our listeners. Welcome to On the Couch with Dr. Diamond, Miss Sanella, and Miss Rajenta. So, we are going to begin our discussion today. This one is going to be a heavy discussion. So, I'm going to bring Miss Rajanta in, and we are going to start our morning with everyone. So, again, good morning to everyone. Good
Good
morning to you,
morning.
Rajanta.
Good
How's it
morning.
going?
It's well. It's going well. I had the opportunity to travel to the African American Museum, in DC. Very enlightening. So it's going well. I couldn't ask for a better trip.
Wow. Okay. So you know what? I have been there too, the African American Museum, and to all our listeners, I hope you had the opportunity to go to the African American Museum because it is very enlightening, especially when you go down to the beginning. And again, those of you that are listening and watching us this morning, if you have not been there, when you first come into the museum, the first place you should go is downstairs. Now, Rajanta, tell them why you start downstairs. Why is that recommended?
Um, You start downstairs because it really goes over how we actually got here. It goes all the way back to the 15 and 1600s, of how we began. Like how we began, it talks about how great we were, how the civilizations that we had, kings and queens, princes and princesses. So it's a wonderful feeling initially, but then the captures began. First traded for goods, and then it's very. I was very depressed, but as time goes on, you kind of go to the different phases and the different floors you get to. Believe next floor is like after slavery, talks about the Jim Crow laws, sharecropping, and things like that. Followed by the civil rights movement. So things started to get better.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a little happier.
Mm-hmm.
But by the fourth floor, I was like dancing and singing. So it was a wonderful thing. It just shows our growth as a people and how far we've
Yes.
come.
Yes, it is very impactful, and you're right. It's very sad when you get to, also, if you recall, when you get to like the second floor, you see the going where you see all of the cotton and how much cotton our ancestors were picking, and they were called pickers. I don't know if anyone had the chance to watch the 1619 Project, but I suggest that you follow it. Nicole Hannah Smith is, I believe, the person who's the writer of the 1619 Project, and that is a great way to understand your history as well. It incorporates a lot of what you will see at the African American Museum. Now, what is so funny about that and how she made the parallels, because those who pick cotton were considered to be pickers. And then they talk about a corporation that actually used that same term today. So it shows you how growth is very small when it comes to Black and Brown communities and this terminology that is still used for us, which is, very insulting because we would think that we have come a far way, but we have not. But there are a lot of achievements that we have had. And you're right, all of the achievements that we've seen, all of those that have come before us to really put their life on the line to make change. The changes that we've seen, and then what we have brought from, Africa to here, all of the talent. And when you think about music, the hip hop section of the exhibit there is extremely awesome because you get a chance to see how it all started in the South Bronx and then it went from there. So when Rajanta is saying to you her whole mood change, yes, your whole mood changes because you can see also how we got into medicine, and then we, broaden that, and made it, these extraordinary inventions, the plasma. When you think about it, how that was discovered really by a Black surgeon who discovered that. So there are so many things that we've done, and even going into the military, when they have a whole exhibit about the Buffalo Soldiers. I love the Buffalo Soldiers
Yeah.
because they really brought it. Okay,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the 54th as well. If anyone knows seen Glory before, that's real. These are real people that did these extraordinary things. And I think we're extraordinary people who have power. But with our power, sometime I think we're ignorant to our power. Some of us are. So today, this morning, I know we're going to get into a heavy discussion, but I think it's warranted and needed. And those of you that are watching us, drop your comments in the chat so we can hear or see what you're saying, so we can also incorporate your thoughts about what we're going to be talking about today. And our topic today is police brutality and the traumatic effects on the Black and Brown communities. Okay, so we have been extreme, dealing with this, I guess, as far as back as slavery. So,
Hmm.
since you talked about the African American Museum, the patrol, when you hear that word patrol, what do you get from that?
Well, when I think about the patrol, I just think about slavery, and the fact when there were, just slaves who were kind of sent to kind of whip other slaves. Were sent to catch slaves who escaped. So I guess it kind of gave them favor with the master, right? So we always kind of wanted to be in good graces, so that maybe the whipping would stop for us. Maybe so we can kind of be seen as better than other slaves. Like, okay, this person is in the house, this person is the field. I'm better than just because. I also think about Django. Now, I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to see Django, but that really blew my mind with the portrayal of how things were back then, and this stuff is kind of, the mentality is really passed down, as seen, in the recent police brutality, um, with the young man that was killed. Just knowing
Mhm.
that those officers were African American, you know, and I guess it's different for me in aspect because when it's white officers, we kind of expect certain things, right? We expect a duck to be a duck, but when the duck turns into a turkey, and it's your own, you're thinking like, how can this person do this? They know, what we go through, what we experience as African Americans. They know the oppression that we have dealt with over time. So it kind of affects me in a different way because it's like, wow, like, do you not love yourself? Do you not know how far we've come? It's very, very, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
It's very heartbreaking. Our community constantly is going through a level of trauma. So you have to take it back from being human trafficked first, because they're being ripped away, taken away from everything that they know, their culture, traditions of their families, all of those things, to be thrown into a world they don't know about, and going across as they a lot of the narratives. So if you remember that from the African American Museum, you heard the narrative of those that were coming across. They had no idea what was happening to them.
Mhm.
And they would go into a strange place and they said, what is this? So now you get to this place and then you are being brutalized.
Mhm.
So just think about that word brutality and then trauma, how they both go together, like they marry each other, because this is
Yes.
what our folks experience day to day to day. And then you have to now think about the patrol. So these patrol were designed to make sure these slaves went back to these plantations if they were caught. Not only when they were caught, they were hung, or a limb was taken off.
Mhm.
I mean, these things actually happen to us, that we, as African Americans and those that are Latinx, we consider ourselves human beings, but they did
Absolutely.
not consider us human beings. So, therefore, they didn't know that we can feel. We
Absolutely.
do feel. We feel everything. We feel the trauma. We feel everything that's going on. So let's fast forward now. So let's, even before we get any further before we get to Tyree Nichols, think about Rodney King. Okay, that was something that was, we saw it. And I
Absolutely.
know I was much younger, so you and I had to be younger to see that and to think
Absolutely.
and say to ourselves, what is happening here? What is happening?
Absolutely. And then the
Mhm.
ongoing effects, I would say, of the PTSD that it brings within our community, the depression, right? And hurt people, they hurt people. So I think about that, and I think about how that's passed on, and just the different things that happen in our community as an effect, with our young people and the violence that goes on. It's a very, very big thing. Sometimes the callousness that goes on, and actually just not really knowing how to react, how to feel, and just how to work through that, mentally. And I want to just do some quick statistics before we move forward. 80 to 90% of the cases with homicide are killed by another Black person. So most of the perpetrators
Mhm.
are African American. Homicide is also the leading cause amongst Black men, and it contributes significantly to our shorter lifespans. So whether it be the hand of a police officer, whether it be as a man at the hands of a community member, a peer, it's very, very prevalent within our community. And we are all often searching for answers as to why, like what's going on. Obviously, it's gotten worse over the
Mhm.
years. And I'm not sure whether it's COVID. I'm not sure why, but I'm sure research is being done just to try to figure out why things are getting increasingly worse amongst our young
Yes.
people.
Yes. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. You ever heard of that terminology?
I haven't. I haven't.
Okay, I'm going to explain the post traumatic slave syndrome to you and everyone that is listening and watching us this morning. Um, Dr. Joy DeGruy is the person that wrote the book called Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And based on this book, she talks about the generational trauma that we all experience. So take it from the first person that came. So let's look at the first 20 slaves that came here that's documented and came into actually everyone think it's just Jonestown, but it's not Jonestown. So they actually came into Virginia. It is Virginia, but I'll tell you the town shortly. But when they came, think about the 20 that came here. Okay. Think about their children that they had and their children. That trauma goes down from one
Mhm.
generation to the next. So let's even fast forward and say, when we are pulled over by the police, but prior to that, what do we do as Black Americans and people of color? We prep ourselves and our children
That's
to go
right.
out into society. So that is what trauma looks like. When you're telling your son, make sure you put your hands on the steering wheel, don't make any sudden movements, don't say anything that will cause you to get pulled out of your car. That's trauma that's gone from one generation to the next. Okay. So it is what we live daily. So that is
Absolutely.
post traumatic slave syndrome because it's coming from the slave who experienced the trauma that continue that has gone through all of our generations. Think
Absolutely.
about not being out and I have someone that says staying out of the way. Yeah, that's true. Staying out of the way, not looking at white folks, even back in the day. So that is also something that went down, and you got to think about the generations that went through it.
Yes, and
And
doctor, I even think about, even, the police being in the vicinity, right? We see a police, we
yes,
drive our police car, we're going to immediately check our mirrors, right? To see whether or not they're following
yes.
us, just to see what's going on, to make sure you're going to pump the brakes, make sure you're going the speed limit. You're going to prepare, and once we get
Mhm.
through that, it's a sigh of relief that kind of comes over us, like, okay, we're good, you know?
Yes.
It's unfortunate. It is.
Uh-huh. And that is exactly what post-traumatic slave syndrome is. Those of you that have never heard of it, please look it up. It'll give you an insight to understanding us, parts of us, and why we respond the way we do, even in our own communities. Just even bringing up our own Black on Black crime. This is supposed to be Black History Month, right? The shortest month of the year. However, traumatic things continue to happen even amongst us in our community. Are we highlighted more? Yes. Are other communities that are not Black and of not color do the same thing? Yes. But who is looked at the most? Us,
Hmm.
just us. But the
Absolutely.
power is what we got to tap into. So let's define police brutality. So quickly, I'm going to define it for you. Police brutality is defined as the use of excessive physical assault or verbal assault during police procedure, such as apprehending or interrogating a suspect. Deadly force is not always excessive force. However, when deadly force exceeds the force that is necessary to create a safe environment, it is considered police brutality. So, therefore, if you're experiencing police brutality, it's because now it's over what it should be. If I'm having a basic stop, I'm being pulled over, then I'm being asked to get out of my car. When you ask me for my registration and my driver's license, I hand it to you, and maybe you don't like the way I'm looking right now, so now
Mhm.
you're going to pull me out of my car, and all of a sudden I'm getting punched in the face, thrown down to the ground. I'm not following the instructions. So all of these things are happening when it shouldn't be that way.
Mhm. I definitely agree with you. And what comes to mind is Sandra Bland. I remember a couple of years ago when the incident happened with, the body cam incidents. For me to a woman of color, really just made me, disgusted. And I couldn't believe, I was in disbelief. So when people say defund the police department, I'm all for police. But I will say that I'm not for the stigma that goes along with them, stereotyping, people of color. I definitely would, recommend proper training and just definitely cultural competency. We all have to be competent. Each culture is different, and we need to be more realistic when it comes to the needs of different communities, right? One community may do things this way, this community may do things another way. It doesn't make them wrong. It just means that we're all different. We're just like a melting pot.
Exactly. We are a melting pot that people that are thinking people, creative people, people that can work together and make a way out of no way. That is a term that you will see also in
Hmm.
the African American Museum, because we do
Yes.
make a way out of no way. We don't
Yes.
even know, we go through this struggle, and sometimes you don't even know you're struggling,
That's right.
especially when you're a kid,
That's
because
right.
we learn how to use our power in that way. So that is what makes us so magnificent when it comes to us being people, black
Yes.
people in general. But then we have to think about all the other things that shouldn't be there, right? No one
Yes.
is perfect. No one. Okay.
Yes.
But we also have to realize what we are going through. The media, how the media portrays us. Let's talk about that. How does that look for us, especially black men? How are they portrayed in the media? And all of you, drop a comment, because I'm pretty sure you all have a comment on how our brothers are being looked at.
Mhm. I just want to say, just aggressively, if you're a big guy, you're looked at to be intimidating. You're looked at to be just aggressive. And you can be like the gentle giant, like my husband. He's a big guy. He automatically looks like he's intimidating, but he's like the
Mhm.
nicest guy that you can meet. And I guess I want to share a story as when we were initially house hunting. So the realtor, took us to the house, right? We left the house and we came back around the house on our own to see it. The people, the neighbors, actually called the police on us. We didn't know until we got back home there was actually a police at our door. I guess someone who in the neighborhood wrote down our license plates and said that they thought that we were kind of trying to break in the house. And that happened. I was kind of blown away by that. Another incident, when we were looking to dock our boat. My husband went down to Burlington City to the port, the dock, to try to see, about the docking and things like that. He actually was dr- guns drawn. Sorry, because I'm still like a little upset about this. So the police
Mhm.
actually came up on him, guns drawn, just saying that he fit the description. He was just looking at, place to dock the boat. I guess he looked like someone in the neighborhood that something happened. Black car, black man. So they made him get out the car. So that incident was very I guess it was very worrisome for us, and very disgusting once again. And we kind of just see that the stereotypes and the stigmas are still around, once it comes to African American men. So I'm sure a lot of
Mhm.
African American men have been pulled over before. I don't know any who have not been pulled over before, but maybe that's
Mhm.
But everyone I've talked to have actually been pulled over before because they fit the description of someone.
Mm-hmm. And I'll share a story with you as well. My brother, he was young teenager. He had to be about 13 or 14 years old. So picture this, we grew up in Harlem. So he's walking down the street. Everybody had those bucket hats back in the day, and they came in different colors. He happened to have one that was red. So there was a suspect, I guess, out there that actually murdered someone. Do you know they picked my brother up, took him to the police station? If it wasn't for someone in the neighborhood that knew my father, because my father was known all throughout Harlem, they were like, look, we see somebody, the police come and pick your son up. He went down to that police station and he demanded for them to release him because they said, oh, he looked like somebody. He said, really? He's 14 years old. I mean, really, who does he look like? Who does he resemble? Do you know it was a grown man they was talking
Mm,
about? So when you really think about like Tamir Rice, that was a little boy that was minding his own business. For you to come up on him and shoot him with no regards to his life, that tells you what our lives are like. Emmett Till, everybody
yes.
goes back to that story because it rings in our lives today,
Hmm.
although it happened so long ago. The thing is, it is present now.
It is.
These men weren't even law enforcement, but law enforcement tried to cover it up. But Emmett Till was a victim of that. So, just their hatred. And I want to talk about racial stereotypes. These stereotypes is why Black men and Black women are attacked and treated badly by some of these police officers. And I'm going to say some because it's not all. Some of them are out there going based off of what they believe the stereotypes are, especially all Black men are thieves, right? They're out to
100%.
hurt you. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. So these are the traumas that, again, we are going through, but these are based on racial biases. So, what do you think about that, racial biases?
Wow. Having worked in the correctional facilities for quite some time, both in the Juvenile Justice Commission and the Department of Corrections, most recently handling a more administrative, where the sentencing. So I had the opportunity to do work where a lot of cases, once you get sentenced, your case will come to my department. So just seeing how they were sentenced, Black men are sentenced at a higher rate than white men or any other race. Just seeing how many going through the jacket, just seeing how many times a white person would get probation, or just fines, versus a Black man, they're getting 5 years. Okay, from the
Mm-hmm.
rip, first offense, 5 years, 19 years old. Okay, and this could be like a student that's going to school, a student that has a job, a college student. Getting 5 years. So basically, the odds are against us once we turn 18. Okay, once we
Mm-hmm.
turn 18, that stuff is going on our record and it's going to affect us. It's going to affect us when we get out, right? Because how hard is it to get a job without a felony, right? It's even harder to get a job with a felony. Not saying that it can't happen, but that is just a barrier that kind of keeps us kind of underneath somebody's foot, right? So we can't get a
Mm-hmm.
job to feed our family, right? So we're going to do possibly something illegal, right? Because the kids need to eat, right? Babies need diapers and rent needs to be paid, right? So just kind of really experiencing that firsthand, the sentencing structures, the criminal justice systems, and these are charges that come from the police initially. When the police
Mm-hmm.
generally pulls you over and gives you a charge, this kind of they. You go to court, they determine whether or not to make it a felony, whether or not to waive up the charge, whether or not. So this kind of starts at that municipal level. Um, and it all goes back to police brutality and the way people look at us, the way we're
Yes.
seen. We're automatically looked at as, you're into something, like you're into trouble, like what are you doing? Like, I'm just walking down the street. I can't just
Mm-hmm.
walk down the street, it just can't be me. So we really have to be cautious, unfortunately, because one incident can kind of cause us to be locked up.
Yes, one incident could cause us to be locked up, or you look like someone.
Mhm.
So think about, I want us to just isolate that thought of those that are coming out of the penal system. That is
Mhm.
traumatic because that is a trauma. Again, when you think about it, yes, I committed a crime, and then some didn't commit a crime. They're sitting in there having to follow these
Yes.
rules, dealing with racial biases because
Yeah.
you it's a lot in there. And
Mhm.
then they have to come back out to society.
Yes.
That is trauma.
It's a whole world. I got
Hmm.
to experience it working within the system. And it's a whole culture as well. There's a lot that
Hmm.
goes on within the system that people are unaware of. To being called out your name, you're working for like $1 a day. You're being mistreated. Anything you do, because I know if you're not aware, you still get charges while you're in jail. So while you're
Yeah.
in jail, you can still get charged for disobeying. You can get all type fighting charges, and these charges will cause you to kind of have more time. You're not going to go home sooner because you have this time,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
or possibly you're going to be in lockup, segregation for 365,
That's
because of
right.
this. So there's a and that affects you going home as well. So once you get in the system, it's a whole nother piece once you're incarcerated in the system. And then once you come on home
Hmm.
from the system, because you may, depending on how they sentence you, um, they may downgrade it to like a burglary, or they may, make it a robbery. Once it's
Yep.
a robbery, you get the NERA, no early release.
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
automatically have to come home with 85% in additional parole, either 3 years
Yep.
parole or 5 year parole. In addition to the time you just spent in jail, the 20 years you just spent in jail, or the 5 years. So
Hmm.
and this is all off of the one charge from the municipal police officer or the town or city police officer pulling you over. This all starts at that level,
Hmm.
stereotypes and the stigma. Like I said, I've seen, robbery charges get downgraded to B&Es, to misdemeanors,
Yeah.
where I've seen charges get upgraded to actually robbery, first and second degree. And when you get them
Yeah.
robbery charges, that's it. You're automatically
Yeah.
going to have 3 year or 5 year probation,
Yeah.
parole once you come home. So
Yep.
it's a
Yeah.
whole beast. It's a whole different beast when it comes to that.
It is. So that lady justice is not real to me because it's not fair. There is no fairness in the judicial system, but you got to go back to what we came from. There's a period of slavery. You think about that so-called slave Bible. That Bible only told slaves what they're supposed to be doing, which is to
Hmm.
honor their master. And then they pull whatever scriptures they pull, the 40 lashes and all of this other stuff. So this is what we're dealing with, because when you spin it and you fast forward it till now, is it any different? No, it's just a different way we call
Yes.
slavery, all in a
Yes.
different name, right?
Yes, and
So
then when
that's
we think of,
happening.
just the criminal justice system in these institutions being filled with mostly black men, you think
Mm-hmm.
about how, and I've just come up to the conclusion like it's because of the sentencing, it's because of different stigmas and stereotypes that okay, I may do something, so I'm going to get probation, but my counterpart may do
Mm-hmm.
the same exact thing, and they may get 5 years. It's also been shown and proven that in different towns, right, the incarceration rate is higher amongst black and brown people. I think
Yeah.
about Camden. I think
Yeah.
about Trent. I think about Newark. So when a case would come across my desk, I already knew. Depending on the sentence, I already knew what town they were from. Certain towns sentence higher than other towns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So then look at, when you think about the trauma of that too. That's traumatic as well. I'm going through all of this, going through a sentencing, going through I love this though. This is my favorite. You are going to be sitting in front of you're going to be
Peers.
judged by your peers. I love this. Okay. So go back now to all of these black folk who sit in front of their peers who were all Caucasian. Does that make sense to you? No. But this is what was stated to
Yes.
us.
Yes.
Okay. So unfortunately, when we look at the judicial system, we're looking at a whole broken system. So
Mhm.
now, as we move forward with this, let's talk about what that looked like for us to keep watching these videos of brutality. But the biggest one, and one I want us to really focus on today, this morning, is what happened to Tyree Nichols, because we're talking about five black officers. But the swiftness is what I'm looking at here.
Mm-hmm.
Swift. I mean, they fired them, and I understand the transparency, and thank you for that, because we thank you for the transparency. We needed that.
Mm-hmm.
However, my question is, you not only had the five officers, but you had the one white officer appeared to me to be more protected, because he should have been fired just like everyone else based on his statement. He was the initiator when he actually let go his stun gun on him. So that was a lot there. That was a lot there that was going on. So he was treated very differently.
Yes, yes. He didn't. Did he get desk duty? Was he suspended right away? Because I'm just thinking about the other instances where the officers were brutal to African
Mm-hmm.
Americans, and they kind of got desk duty until they kind of figure
Mm-hmm.
things out. They're going to launch an investigation first to see what really happened. If the video enough, and then the outcry and outpouring of the community kind of pressed them and put pressure on them, then they're gonna get fired. So I just think about just the way it went. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
these officers should have been dealt with, but then I think about
Mm-hmm.
past instances. Like, are they doing this to kind of because they learned from the past instances where they didn't want a riot or anything to take place, or the way they handled it? Is it because of the officers being African American?
I think twofold: African American, and also to avoid the breakdown of their city, the riots. Okay, so that's what they thought was going to happen because of that, and it could have. It could have. I also think people respected the family, because when the mom said, please do not go out, and you can go out and riot, you can do that, not riot, but go out and speak up about this, but don't tear your city up. When you're
Yes.
taking away the pharmacies and the food and stuff, we got to realize our black folks and brown folks, we only have one and two supermarkets. Okay,
Yes.
think about
Yes.
it. One or two CVS's or pharmacies. Think about this: when you are out there protesting, we can
Mhm.
protest, but don't
Mhm.
protest to the point where you're taken away from our community. Let's not do that. Let's
Mhm.
do something different. And I think when you think about it, Memphis did it differently when they were quieter. Atlanta, quieter. They did do
Mhm.
the protesting, but they did it in the most healthy way possible.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, when you think about, again, when we go back to our trauma, the black on black crime, that is traumatic, very traumatic. um the trauma of watching five brothers do what they did. Now, they didn't anticipate the sky cop. I swear they
Mhm.
couldn't have thought about that. There's no way, because if they did, they would have, what do you think they would have done if they were aware of it?
Listen, if they weren't aware of it, they would have stopped immediately. I think that just that in itself, just them knowing that nobody was watching, right? Because you wear this badge, and I don't know, I've never been a police officer, but I'm on an assumption when you wear this badge, you kind of become bigger and badder than what you really are. Like you kind of feel like you're invincible, right? You can have, there's no
Mm-hmm.
rules that apply to you. And I've seen it
Mm-hmm.
working in the correctional field. The rules apply to everyone else, but they don't apply to you. So you become
Yes.
this, I guess, this superhero. No one can say
Mm-hmm.
anything to you. No one can say anything. Officer, why am I pulled over? No, just shut up and give me information. So, I think that, the badge kind of makes you feel superior, if you will.
Yes.
And not to take
Yes.
away, there are very, very good cops. I have police
Mm-hmm.
members of my family are very excellent cops that I know and love, but there are some that are not so good. And unfortunately, it does bring down um, you know, a lot of police departments, the bad
It
apples.
does. It does. The bad apples do bring them down. And unfortunately, these five bad apples was doing the worst thing they could possibly do, which was terrorize their own neighborhoods. You're
Mhm.
supposed to be there to protect and serve, not to brutalize and hurt the very people you look like. But then guess what? All skin, same skin folk ain't kinfolk.
Mhm.
Okay. So they
Exactly.
actually showed that. They really
Yeah,
did.
and I
They humiliated us.
yeah, and I think that that really hurts. I think about, just different police officers from the city where I'm from Trenton. I think about, the police officers who kind of shake down local drug dealers or kind of rob them, of
Hmm.
their things. Don't lock them up. They're gonna rob them. I just think about the way things are handled, and just that light is not really being shown. It's not being addressed. I think about the police officers in the city who kind of beat down and beat up. You know,
Hmm.
it's a mess. It is a mess. And things are
Hmm.
not getting better, unfortunately.
And it's not getting better. So, what does that do to us as a community as a whole? Well, here's what the traumatic part of it and the aftermath is about it. Some of us go into or spiral into depression, others spiral into panic attacks where the anxiety begins to happen, so it begins to heighten how you begin to feel. Oh, I'm scared. Should I go out into the community? Should I send my son out into the community?
Mhm.
No, you don't want to send your son out into the community because you are afraid to do that. Your daughter as well. Because
Mhm.
guess what? When you go back to white cops and police officers, they did attack black women too. They raped them. So that was the
Mhm.
other thing that cops were doing that most women probably have never, they were too afraid to talk about it. So when you think about this ongoing trauma, it is ongoing in the effects. The effects is the fear of being in your own community, the fear that someone is going to jump on you because of what your skin looks like, the fear that, hey, if I go out, what can happen? What can I be exposed to? So, if we think about this as a whole, it's a lot of trauma. So, there's a lot of things that our listeners are saying to right now as well. And I want to highlight some other traumatic things that has happened in the community that's local. So when you have a 22-year-old stabbed, okay, so and this was in Trenton, stabbed, right? And that happened. Um, Stabbed to death 3 days ago at a basketball game.
Mhm.
Okay? Come on. That's black on black crime, but think about the trauma. Why? What will bring you to a state to hurt this person?
Mhm.
Why? We have to think about that. What happened here? Okay? Then another person as well. It says Stephanie Ville, 34 years old, killed by her baby father. This was in Trenton
Mhm.
also 3 to 4 days ago. This
Yes.
stuff is still
Yes.
happening
Yes.
in our
And you
communities.
gotta really think about what goes through someone's head to kinda make them wanna
Hmm.
take another person's life. Especially if it's not self-defense. Like, what goes through someone's head? I'm thinking
Yeah.
about a time, last weekend I went to an event. I met a woman, and I actually knew her son, and I knew her son that was killed. I just ran into her at an event. Breon Blackshear was his name. And the woman was still crying. I was talking. I'm like, I remember your son. Like, I remember when he was killed. I remember where he was killed. Like, and she still kind of struggles with this. She actually starts. She has a support group which she started in the city, which she does every 2 weeks, and she kind of really tries to bring a lot of mothers together, people who've been affected by this violence. I also think about my cousin, Diana Davis, Hodges Davis, her husband that was murdered a couple years ago, Diesel Davis, which is why I named my company, my practice off of, Diesel Therapeutics. I think about just the kids that are affected. I think about the cousins that are affected. I think about the mothers and the fathers that are affected by this crime, senseless
Hmm.
crime, and the
Hmm.
trauma that it kind of causes ongoing and unknowingly. You think about,
Hmm.
do the people who kind of do these things, commit these crimes, like, do they really think about the aftermath? Do they think about the sentencing? Do they think about being in there 75 years, all brick cement walls around you? I really don't think people really think about that. And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the interactions I've had with inmates working within a correctional facility. If they can go
Yeah.
back, like, if they can go back in
Hmm.
time, I would have done things
Hmm.
differently.
Hmm.
But
Right.
sometimes it's too
Exactly.
late. You don't always get that second chance, but it affects
Yes.
everyone, even even the parent or the family member who has to go and do the bid with that person. That's a whole nother
Hmm.
thing. You're going to
Hmm.
get searched, to get up to the visits. You're getting searched,
Hmm.
they're searching the baby's pampers going into the visits. So it really, listen, it affects everyone as a whole in
It
the community.
does. And
Hmm.
it does. And I'm gonna touch on a historical fact for you too when it comes to how we also treat each other. This is an ingrained behavior as well, right? So from back in my studies when I was putting together my dissertation, I went back and I found what is considered to be a fictitious person, but it's called the Willie Lynch letter. So I don't know if anyone has ever heard of it, but I'm going to share it a little bit with you on in the significance of why this was written. This was the local or these are, I believe they were in Delaware, Virginia. They were off of Virginia. So now they're on the Virginia off of the water. They bring this man in from England. And the question was, how do we keep our slaves in order? So what he did was he broke down how you pin them against each other, light against dark,
Hmm.
old against young. Okay. So it's a series of things here to
Yes.
break the system down. You know what that was supposed to do? Break down the unity.
Mm.
If you and I are united and we see each other as sisters,
Hmm.
the goal of the overseer is to break us down. Oh, look at her. You and I, we're brown women, but they're what they consider back there was mulatto, right? The
Hmm.
mulatto
Hmm.
are the lighter ones. They treated better. You and I
Yes.
will be outside. All right, we outside. We don't like her because she's inside, not
Yes.
realizing she going through her own trauma
Yes.
inside.
Getting
Okay,
raped and carried on. Uh-huh.
right. So here
Hmm.
it is. You broke us down. You broke our system
Yes.
down. So what do? We take that with us from one generation to the next to the next. Let's just overall talk about colorism. So we're just going to put this aside for a second, everybody, the brutality, but the colorism is what I want to talk about, how that is ingrained in us. A lot of us do it and we pretend that we don't, but we do. We have children that we look at and go, "Ooh, this one is lighter than that one." They
Hmm.
hear it. And you know what they
Hmm.
begin to say? This one is darker than me. Why? How come? I don't want to talk to that one because that one is darker than me. This is what we do to our kids. That is the ongoing trauma of the Willie Lynch letter. Stop it. If you are a person that did it or have done it or you do it by default, please recognize that you are doing it. There's no reason that you should do this, okay? When I had my son, I don't know, years later when he got older, out of curiosity, and I think this is again me doing my studies, I just went to his room and I asked him, I said, "Do you look at color?" He said, "What you talking about?" Because he don't know what I was saying. Because I was talking about amongst us. He said, "Ma, I don't even know what you're talking about." You know what I said to myself? I did my job because he wasn't going around saying, "Oh, I like this girl because she light. I like this one because she dark. I don't like." He wasn't doing that because he had no concept of what that meant. Colorism.
Absolutely.
Now, you see, and
And
that
we all
is
bleed the
our
same. We all
responsibility.
bleed the same. We put our pants leg on one leg at a time. We all have
Yes.
different things that we go through. You know, being
Yes.
African American, listen, our walks are we share the same struggles.
Yes.
A
We
lot of
share
people.
the same. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Absolutely. We share the same struggle. So I want to present to you all a quick article. I'm not going to read the article. I want you all to go back and um, look at this article. The article is done February 8th, 2023 by Dion Scott Hawkins. Okay, this is called How Black Communities Cope with Trauma Triggered by Police Brutality. All right, what I'm going to do is like read a couple of excerpts from the people that have said something about how they felt. And you and I, Rajanta, will comment. And those of you that are also in the comment, drop your comment based on what is being said. Okay, so this young man here name is Demetrius. I remember I walked into work, face cut up, and people were like, "What's wrong? What happened?" I told them I had been in a fight, but really I had been beat up by the police officer who assumed I was someone else. I appreciated them asking me if I was okay, but I wasn't really comfortable telling them. We had previous conversations that let me know that they didn't really think Black Lives Matter. After Philandro, I had to take a sick day to recover. That's
Mhm.
how sad I was, man. You see that? That's
Yeah.
trauma.
It's
Not
it's
only
so
was he
sad.
beat him, but Philandro affected him.
Mhm. Mhm. And we think about those types of things. We think about the George Floyd, but really changed things. It was a big game changer for the African American community. We saw our allies come out and show out for us, and we kind of joined forces with white, black, brown. We all kind of got it because I guess this might have been the first time they've actually seen this, but we've already known all along what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But for that to kind
Mm-hmm.
of come to the forefront, it really was a game changer for our community. A lot of different policies were put into place because of it. Unfortunately, he was the fallen soldier. My hearts and prayers and thoughts still go out to his family. But
Yes.
I want to say, just bringing that type of thing to the forefront, everybody's affected by incidents that happen within the community with the police, with police brutality, even black and brown crime amongst each other. It's definitely detrimental to our community and detrimental to our families, to our friends, and to everyone who loves us.
Exactly. Okay, so this is by Mary. Mary says, whenever I see cops, I tense up. One time, cops pulled up to me when I was in my car, and my friend looked at me with the straightest face and said, one of us is about to die. I was
Mm,
shocked and I said, that's not funny, but he was serious. He really thought one of us was going to die. Come on, my black people and brown people. Come on now. Listen to what I just read to you. That's trauma. That is trauma. Now, I see a lot of comments also here in our chat. And I do feel that black men, I agree with this comment here, how they are negatively portrayed in the media.
mhm,
Not only just the news. Think about when we watch different shows. They're
mhm,
entertaining. They are. Don't get me wrong. They're entertaining. But
mhm,
it does portray our brothers like they are some thugs, have no education,
mhm,
they have no sense of being, and that is a lie. Because I
mhm.
can tell you right now, I am going to stick up for some of my brothers, even the ones that is in the system. They are smart
Yes,
as can get out. I
yes,
have never the intelligence sometimes is
mhm,
beyond what I can think of,
yes,
and I'm like, oh my god, like
yes.
how?
I think about
Because
the inmates. I'm sorry. I think about the inmates who were in there in the
mhm,
law library every day, overturning
yes,
their cases. Okay, they are better than some
hello.
lawyers and some judges. Okay, they are smart, very intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Now, another comment says, ladies, Rajanta, invalidation is a real condition that has been injected in our system. Amen.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And I think about a lot comes to mind about our journey, even invalidating our experience, our shared experiences, even downplaying the long term effects that slavery has brought on. Everybody says, "Oh, get
Mm-hmm.
over it. It was this." You think about how disproportionate we are affected financially, right?
Yes.
We think about
Yes.
redlining, not being able to live in certain communities because it was
Mm-hmm.
all set up, so we are unable to kind of inherit this financial this just the financial increase that other communities have experienced because of um, this land or this property. So it's definitely affected us. We have to validate ourselves, just know that we are good enough, knowing how amazing we are, and knowing how great we are, and that we were meant and built to survive. And I just think about resiliency, the resiliency that we have had as a people throughout the years, everything we've been
Yes.
through, everything
Yes.
we've been through.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And we have been through a lot. Um, a little girl wrote a book around um about George Floyd called
Wow.
Corner Store. So
Wow.
all of you, Corner Store, look that up and let's support this little young lady because you know what? That took courage for her to write that.
Absolutely.
Um also we don't heal or cope even after years of therapy. Yes, and yes, and yes. And as a professional therapist, I'm telling you, we experience so much trauma. Our trauma is layered.
Mm-hmm.
It's layered. And when I tell you, when I'm working with different people from our community, I always talk about them as the onion because we are. We are layered with trauma. We are layered with so much pain and hurt, and we don't know what to do with it. And this is why sometimes, and I'm not going to say this is okay, but when we are leaping on each other, it's because we're misdirecting our pain and anger. That
Mm-hmm.
person may have triggered something in them. They may have said something, and bam, there goes the violence. And are we going to condone that? No and no. But I know what it is. It's the trauma that's talking.
Trauma. And I think that especially during this time, during this month, you know how we say the month is not long enough for us. Like why we celebrate it, only 1 month out of the year. And I'm gonna share a quick incident that happened at my job.
Sure.
So I tried to do a Black History table at my job. A woman helped me who was Latino. She helped me do the table. So I just tried to do a whole quick thing with crossword puzzles. And all I had was candy to put on the table after everything was done. So I put candy on the table, inspirational quotes on the table. The candy happened to be brown root beer barrels. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
thinking this. I'm just thinking I need some trinkets for the table to make the table look nice, so that people can come and just grab whatever they grab. So I go out and come back in, found out that they took the candy off the table, very offended because it was brown, and threw it out.
Mm.
So when you think about trauma, I just think about how deep that trauma is that you don't even want to eat the brown candy. So you're offended because of the candy being brown, and we shouldn't have brown candy, during Black History Month. So that really blew me away to the point where I'm like, okay, the
Yeah.
conversation needs to be had now. Like, what's really going on, in your psyche for to be that deep and that embedded, inside
Yes.
your
Yes.
spirit, for you to be
In your
offended in
spirit.
that way. So yeah, it's unfortunate.
Absolutely.
It goes deep. It runs deep.
It runs very deep, very, very deep. And, we have to continue to educate ourselves on how we can work through this slowly.
Absolutely.
Here's another comment. We will survive as a nation of beautiful Black and brown royal people. We are royal. We have to
We
believe
are.
it though. And
We
a lot
are.
of us don't believe it. And
Yeah.
we are here to encourage, please believe it.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's not that I don't think people don't believe it. I think people really don't know. Some people
Mhm,
don't know their background. They don't know how great we
mhm.
are. Just different
Yeah.
things that we kind of, because big mamas are gone. So we don't
Yeah.
have people to kind of pass down those traditions. We don't have people to pass down those stories of their grandmother and their mother, kind of what the things they went through to kind of get where we are. So we don't have that.
That's
So
right.
I think that people
We
don't know how
don't.
great we are and how far we've come. We have come long ways, from us not even
Mhm,
being able to read and write, right, to now getting our PhDs and being master's levels of therapists.
mhm.
We weren't allowed to read and write,
Exactly.
weren't allowed to drive, weren't allowed to vote, weren't allowed to, own a piece of land. So we think about that. We
Mhm.
think about how far we've come and how far we're going to go. We have
Yes.
long ways, but we have come some ways as well.
Absolutely. So I'm going to read a couple of things for us before we get to the end of our show here. This was extraordinary. And believe me, we will have our part two with Sanella because I do want to hear her voice in this. And I want you all to also continue to send us your comments in our next show because I want to hear what you have to say. I want you to walk away with continuously processing what we were talking about today because this is part one. Part two, we will continue to keep talking and working our way through this and bringing out information more to our African American community and our Latinx community because this is important for us to begin to heal. Okay, so how to cope. Take part in activism against racial injustice. Avoid relationships with people who dismiss the seriousness of racial trauma. Make a list of situations, people, or places that trigger your symptoms and create a list of ways to cope for each one. Avoid these triggers when it's in time of high stress. Role play how to respond to negative racial encounters.
Hmm.
Employ self care by doing things that you enjoy and make you happy.
Hmm.
Limit your exposure to news media and viral videos. Okay,
Yes.
so this is what we are telling you as experts and also as Black women. These are the things that we have to do to try to avoid re traumatizing ourselves. Okay, so I know this was heavy today. I know it was, but I thank everybody that came onto the chat and they gave their comments, their feedback, and their thoughts. Remember, we will have part two, and part two, I believe, will be in 2 weeks, right, Rajanta? We're going to come back
Yes.
to this topic because it's a heavy topic and it's more to talk about. So, this is just, again, part of what we need to talk about, but we're going to revisit trauma again and talk about it extensively more and what that looks like, and then how that looks in our inner communities and how we are also doing things to each other. You
Absolutely.
know, all of what we're doing, like the Black on Black crime. So we
Hmm.
do need to address that. We're not going to let that go, and we're going to talk a little bit more about post-traumatic slave syndrome. I want to address that a little bit more and address it and give you all more of a definition about it so you have a better understanding of what it is. So I'm going to take excerpts out of her book. I'm also going to put that in the chat in our next session or our next podcast so you all can go and find the book as well. So, you know, I know this is the end of our show, but guess what? Listen, like us, you know, by clicking on a YouTube, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, and don't forget to, when we upload the show, that you can listen to it again on your favorite stream. So follow us and listen. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. And again, I know this was very, very heavy to discuss, but we needed to do this, okay? And to all of those that we lost in our community, our condolences goes out to you. Our condolences also go out to the 5 brothers who decided to do what they did, but really to their families, not
Hmm.
to them. Whatever trauma or whatever they went through or whatever it was that caused this to happen, I'm saying to to all their families, I wish you recovery from this as
Hmm.
well because this was traumatic to you also. So, Rajanta, do you have any parting words before we end for today?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Check on your loved ones. You know, make sure they're okay. Definitely validate. You know, the things that they come to you with. Use supportive coping skills when you're trying to sort through different things and process things. And just keep recovery first. Keep God first. And continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you for part two in 2 weeks at 11 a.m. at our scheduled time. Other than that, again, follow us, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for joining on the couch this evening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and if you want to contact Dr. Diamond, you may reach her at candidconversations.dr.d@gmail.com. Have a great evening, and we will see you on the next show.